Now, first let me introduce myself. My name is Yamikani Idriss. I'm an environmental officer responsible for environmental planning, monitoring, and research in Malawi with the Ministry of Forest and Natural Resources. And my current capacity is I'm the LDC coordinator for transparency under the UNFCCC. On my transparency way, I also participate in the technical expert reviews, and at country level, I'm also the CBIT project national coordinator. So at this point in time, I will also encourage you to introduce yourself through the chat so that we can also know you. You can write your information through the chat. Please do so. I've seen others have already started, and that is indeed good. With the agenda, we the lead group negotiator to open this meeting with some opening remarks. The lead coordinator is Mr. Phento Tshering. Please indeed open us with some remarks. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to every one of you. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this virtual event focused on GHG inventories under the Enhanced Transparency Framework. I'm very glad to see all of you today. I hope you and your families are safe in these challenging times. I'm also very pleased to inform that we have received very good number of nominations, over 90 plus. Hope everyone is able to join this meeting today. The ETF adopted under Paris Agreement is key to understand countries' progress on climate actions and support, and also to increase overall ambition over time. LDC Group has always been committed to transparency and to the development of robust ETF. We are cognizant that this is very important and more stringent system that will impose several challenges for LDCs. We have limited technical capacity and less experience reporting to UNFCCC. However, we must see the ETF as an opportunity to access climate finance, improve data management arrangements, and build national capacities over time. The countries must begin domestic preparations to transition from monitoring, reporting, and verifications arrangements under convention to the ETF under the Paris Agreement by 2024, which is when countries are expected to submit their first biennial transparency reports. COP26 in Glasgow is our last opportunity to finish outstanding issues under negotiation to put into action. The GHG inventory reporting tables are one of the issues currently under negotiation to be adopted at COP26. To prepare for these important COP meeting, the LDC Group is holding this virtual event to disseminate the tables under discussion and invite your views. We are eager to hear your opinions as well as your perspectives from your own practice, and also to have in-depth understanding of the practical issues and the solutions. Your views will inform overall LDC Group position on this matter at COP26. And the moderation of the meeting will be handled by LDC Transparency Coordinator, Mr. Yamikani. Thank you so much again for taking part, and special thanks to the UNFCCC Secretariat for their support. I wish all the participants for a successful meeting. Thank you. Mr. Yamikani, you have the floor now. Over to you, Mr. Yamikani. Thank you.
Yep, thank you so much, our lead, how busy you are. So for being here to open this very important meeting, shows how the group indeed prioritizes transparency as a very important issue under negotiation. Yeah, thank you so much. So colleagues, as mentioned by the lead negotiator, we are supposed to finalize the work under transparency at COP26. That's why we are here, so that we can indeed improve our position as well as have your views on the tables. So the main objective of this session is mainly broken down into three. The first one is to familiarize you as LDC experts and negotiators with Annex I reporting tables and tools used as a basis for negotiating on GHG inventory tables. The second one is to receive inputs and ideas from you as LDC experts that could inform the LDC group position on this agenda item. And the final objective is to identify technical experts available to attend the future technical discussions and provide support to us, the transparency negotiators. As we are moving towards the COP, the transparency negotiation is coming too technical. That's why we need to have informed position from you as experts who are working on the ground. And indeed, thank you so much to the Secretariat on some of the issues under negotiation on this agenda item. So taking you to the agenda, I would now like to invite the first presentation. This presentation will be done by our colleagues from the Secretariat. And this presentation is on GHG inventory requirements under the ETF and overview of Annex I GHG inventory reporting tables. So this will be done by Vita Gois and Tomoik Aizawa. So please take us through the first presentation.
All right, thank you, Yamikani, Phento, and LDC Group for the invitation. It's really a pleasure for me and to the UNFCCC team to be here and do our best to provide background information on reporting tables and the tools and enhance transparency framework. And what we hope that we're going to present, we're going to present is useful.
Number 69.
As you can see in the agenda, the first presentation is an overview of the requirements for GHG inventories under the ETF and MPGs. These presentations will be followed by two presentations providing insights on the current tables for reporting inventories and the basic functionalities of the common reporting format reporter. The software, this is a software tool we use to facilitate reporting by developed country parties. So moving to the next slide, the start is naturally Article 13 of the Paris Agreement, which established the enhanced transparency framework to build mutual trust and confidence and to promote effective implementation of the Paris Agreement. The purpose is to provide a clear understanding of climate change action. In particular, paragraph 7A of the Paris Agreement, of the Article 13 of the Paris Agreement, determines that each party shall regularly provide a national inventory report of anthropogenic emissions by source and removals by sinks of greenhouse gases. MPGs, the modalities, procedures, and guidelines, are guided by the principle of the building on enhancing the transparency arrangements and the conventions. And the first CMA, and held in Katowice in December 2008, adopted BMPGs for the transparency framework and containing decisions 18 CMPA. So this annex actually contains 8 chapters elaborating on the MPGs for the different parts of the ETF. The more relevant for these short presentations on the greenhouse gases is Chapter 2, National Inventory Report of Emissions, and also closely related is one on Chapter 7 on the Technical Expert Review. The transparency framework builds, and as I said, builds on enhanced transparency arrangements under the conventions, and including and considers national communications, biannual reports, and the biannual updated reports, and also the international assessment and the review and international consultation and analysis of those two last reports. Okay. The methodological work program, they're still running, and aim is to be completed by COP26 this year. And in accordance to the mandate, also in decision 18 CME1, the SABSTA is requested to develop, pursuant to the MPGs, common reporting tables for the electronic reporting of information on national inventory reports. And also is requested to develop outlines of the biannual transparent report, national inventory document, and the technical expert review report, and the training program for technical experts participating in the technical expert review. So there is still, just to transmit the idea, there's still work being done for the full implementations of the MPG. So this image, this is an overview of Chapter 2 of the MPGs. It provides a structure in terms of contents and in addition of an overview of the requirements that are mandatory, that are shall in orange, and those that are not, the should or may requirements, which are highlighted, which are visible in yellow. So what we have here in the first box, the gray box, is the national inventory arrangements are those institutional, legal, and procedural arrangements for the continued estimations, compilations, and timely reporting of the national inventory reports. On the second one, reporting on those, the following ones, reporting on those arrangements is a mandatory, covers national entity or national focal point with overall responsibility for the national inventory. Its inventory preparations process, including divisions of specific responsibilities of the institutions participating in inventories, mostly on the collections of activity data, and archiving of information, and which is important, the process for the official consideration approval of the inventory. So this is the lines below. And the part on methodology, with the second column, provides guidance on several methodologies issues, so key category analysis, QA, QC, time series consistency, methodologies, and certain analysis and reporting completeness. We will look at those in more detail later on in this presentation, so I will abbreviate here. And this is also closely related to the guidance on the use of common metrics. There's a shell for the use of GWP 100 at 100 years from the AR5, and parties may use other metrics. For instance, there was mentions of the global temperature potentials. So these are in this latest case, this is a may requirements. And then we have the reporting guidance and what parties must report in the two parts. One is the NIR, and the second, which is National Inventory Document, NID, I'm sorry, and also on the common reporting table. So both of them are part of the submissions on GHG inventories under the BTR. Again, we'll look at some more elements in more detail in the coming slides. And this is a specific slide for the developing countries and also for the LDCs. This is important. And so the first thing is the flexibility provisions, and with a view to promoting universal participations, and the ETF and the MPGs include built-in flexibility, which taking account the parties' different capabilities and capacities and build upon the collective experience of both developed and developing countries. So the MPGs within the MPGs specify the flexibility provisions that are available to those developed country parties. that needed in the light of the capacities. So I'm going to abbreviate on that, just mentions flexibility provisions, and this affects the scope, the frequency and level of detail of reporting, and also affects the scope of the review among other things for other parts of the PTR. So we're going to look at those also in detail along the presentations, and the application of the flexibility provided for the provisions is country determined. So that is, the concerned developing country party will be the one to determine when the flexibility could be applied, and always in relation to a particular reporting requirement in MPGs. And in doing so, developing countries shall clearly indicate the provisions to which flexibility applied, and also provide concise information on the capacity constraints, and provide self-determined estimated timeframes for improvements. So this is something country determined. When a developing country party applies a flexibility provided by MPG, so the technical expert review teams will not review the party's determination to apply the flexibility, or whether the party possesses the capacity to implement that specific provision without flexibility. For LDCs and SIDs, actually, the Paris Agreement recognized the special circumstances of those two groups of parties, and it was decided that LDC and SIDs may submit information on Article 14, including the inventories, at their discretion. So finally, I would mention also the support and capacity building. So parties, of course, have different starting points in transitions from the current MRV arrangements and the convention to the ETF under the Paris Agreement, between developed and developing, also within developing countries. Therefore, continuing to enhance the efforts to prepare and submit national communications and biannual update reports and participate in international consultation analysis will help developing country parties develop their national capacity to prepare biannual transparent reports and participate effectively in the ETF and the review process. So there is a specific requirement in MPGs that the parties, to the extent possible, identify, regularly update, and include as part of his PTR information on areas improvements relations to the reporting pursuant to the different chapters of the MPGs. And paragraphs 14 and 15, respectively, and this is last part in this slide, it's determined that support will be provided to developing countries for the implementation of transparency, and this should be based on a continuous basis. This is also related to the work of the Global Environmental Facility, which is called also in the decisions to support developing countries in preparing the first and subsequent PTRs. And also, we'll talk about this later, but it's also to support the operations of CBIT capacity building initiative for transparency, but as a priority, but we'll talk about later on this. And this is, now we're going to briefly mention the different elements of the MPG for Chapter 2, and about the methods and guidelines. And one key change coming from the MPG was the provisions that all parties should use methodologies from the 2006 IPPC guidelines, and also encouraged to use the 2013 wetlands, which are the current rules for reporting under the Convention for Developed Countries. And this is important, but still the parties may use the nationally appropriate methodologies if they're consistent with the IPCC guidelines. And the MPG also includes guidance on the choice of the tiers, the level of complexity of the method to choose, and encourage to use country-specific emission factors and parameters. So, and finally, the metrics to be used, I mentioned this before, are those from AR5. In terms of gases, the shell is the mandatory is to report all categories. All categories, gases, and carbon pools through the inventory period on units of gas at the most disaggregated level in accordance with IPCC guidelines. So, shall report these 7 gases: the CO2, methane, nitrous oxide, HFCs, PFCs, SF6, and nitrogen trifluoride, NF3. And however, there's flexibility in those cases that could apply to instead report at least 3 gases, which is CO2, methane, and N2O, as well as any of the additional 4 gases, F gases, as taking consideration what is included in the parties' NDCs or covered by an activity under Article 6. The sectors are 6: the energy, industrial process and products use, agriculture, LULUCF, and waste, according to the IPCC guidelines. So there is, in comparison to the IPCC guidelines, there is separation between the agriculture sector and the LULUCF sector. And other guidance also appears, the parties should report international aviation and marine bunker fuels separately and not in the totals, and parties should indicate how feedstocks and non-energy use fuels can be used, and in the case of parties addressing natural disturbances, that parties shall report information in the approach taken and whether the estimates are included or not in the national total. And finally, from harvest wood products, parties can use the method, but they need to use at least the harvest wood products using the production approach. This is more for LULUCF experts. And the time series, in time series is from 1990 to the last reporting year. And this is no more than 2 years prior to the submission, and this is a shell. And then there's flexibility here. The reference year could be the reference year or period for is NDC, and in addition, a consistent annual time series from at least 2020 onwards, and then the end period should be 3 years prior to the submission of national inventory, not 2 years. So this next slide, continuing with elements, and I will try to be more brief here. Key categories shall be identified by using approach 1 in 2006 guidelines, and with without LULUCF, and for starting year and last referred year for level and trend. So flexibility may apply in case parties uses an 85% threshold instead of 95, which is the required by MPGs in general. In the parties, in terms of time series consistent recalculations, this provision is related to the request or the shell perform recalculations in accordance with the IPCC guidelines in an ensuring time series consistency, which can achieve by using the same methodology and consistent approach to underlying data and emission factors. This is a should. Also, should are the methods used to estimate gaps in activity data. It could be surrogate data, interpolations of others, also on the IPCC. And finally, on the certainty assessment, it is a shell to estimate quantitatively and discuss the results qualitatively at least for the starting year and the latest reporting year at level and trend, and using at least approach 1 in the IPCC guidelines. And flexibility instead is provided by instead provide qualitative discussions of uncertainties for key categories. So the next slide, I think this is the last one on the elements. The completeness assessment is basically the use of notation keys to indicate categories not reported in the common reporting tables. You can use NO, NE, and not estimated, included elsewhere, and confidential, and as defined in MPGs. And regarding the use of not estimated, if you have not estimated the emissions, it's the parties may, in accordance with the MPG, the parties may use this for insignificant categories in terms of level. And the MPG identified the threshold. It's there for in general, and flexibility provisions apply to the thresholds, making them a little bit less stringent. Important also, this is important, the last one, once emissions or removals have been estimated for the category, and if they continue to occur in the country, each party shall report them its subsequent submissions. And finally, on this slide, the QA/QC parties shall elaborate an inventory QA/QC plan to guarantee the quality of the inventory submissions in accordance with the IPCC guidelines, and shall implement general QA/QC procedures and report them. And in case of flexibility, there is not mandatory implementations in development implementations, but only an encouragement. Yes, I will skip this slide for moving to the next one. So this is the guiding, one of the guiding principles of the MPG is those 5 principles: transparency, accuracy, completeness, consistency, and comparabilities. These definitions originate from 2006 IPCC guidelines, and here they are just summarized. More detailed definitions and more exact definitions are contained in 2006 IPCC guidelines. In short, transparency, in short, I mean, just transparency is all about clarity in documentations, in ID and the tables, so that others may understand how the inventory is compiled and the quality of inventories. Accuracy means good estimates. In terms of definition, that estimates are neither over or underestimated. Consistency is related to time series consistency, yes, but it's also covers the principle of using consistent activity data and assumptions among gases and categories. And completeness, and this is that inventory reflects emissions from all relevant categories. We talk about that in case this is generally meant for those that have methodologies available in the IPCC guidelines. But it also represents the coverage of activity data, for example, territorial coverage. And I said this is related to notation schemes we presented before. And comparability is simply using the common reporting approaches, the tables, outlines. So there is a commonality in the way the reporting is done. So in addition to the principles of the reviews, here, the TACCC, there are other principles in the MPGs, the Paris Agreement, like implementing the ATF in a facilitative, non-intrusive, non-punitive manner, respecting national sovereignty, and avoiding placing undue burden on parties. This is more general, facilitating improved reporting and transparency over time, avoiding duplication of work, and maintain the parties maintaining the frequency and quality of reporting, and ensuring also no double counting and environmental integrity. Because this is mostly dedicated to developing country audience, and you may be used to work on the in the BTR. In the BUR, I'm sorry. The summary, what is difference between a BUR and reporting and the ETF? The major underlying change is, of course, the two-stream track separating developed and developing countries is no longer in place. Reporting is mostly common. In terms of methodologies we talked before, the major change is the use by all parties of 2006 IPCC guidelines. And pre-ETF, developing countries are required to use the previous versions of the guidelines. However, it's true that many developing parties have already been using 2006 IPCC guidelines in recent years in their reporting, and that number has been increasing over time. And conversion of the emission estimate to CO2 now is using AR5 before the second assessment report was used. And the number of gases has been increased and covered now the 4 classes of F-gases, of course with flexibility. Reporting of estimates have to be made sooner. Before to the BUR was year -4, and now is -2, well, flexibility with 3. And the reporting tables, well, this is something to be decided, of course, because this is still being considered by the SABSTA. But while reporting and the BUR was required, no more details than summary level. So under the MPG, it's likely that reporting will be more extensive. And so other aspects, key categories, not mandatory. Then reporting institutional arrangement is required. There are more ample levels. And estimates on uncertainties could be done, and there are no concrete requirements. I think maybe I'm a little bit over the middle of the presentation. I think so. I will skip this one. This is just list the flexibility provisions for national inventories, and I've been talking about them along the elements. So this stays here as so we can move to the next one. And actually, this is a smaller part of the shorter part of the presentations. And we're talking about in general, in timelines. So in accordance with the MPGs, parties must submit their first BTR and national inventory report if submitted separately from the BTR, which may be, at latest by 31st December 2024. So last day of 2024, and then the final biennial update reports for developing countries are those submitted no later than the last day of 2024 as well, and they will undergo the last ICA cycle between 2024 and 2026. And yeah, and of course it's important LDCs and SIDs may submit the information at their discretion. So this is the same. So just written, can move forward. And this is just an animated slide. And these graphs present with the progress of reporting and assessment of reporting submissions over time. So this is broader than the ETF. So this is the inception of the UNFCCC back in 1992. Reporting obligations, national communications, and inventories are already included in the convention itself. And so the review of the national communications by Annex I countries started back in 1996. And the review of the inventories started in 2001. Actually, in between there was the signature of the adoption of the Kyoto Protocol, and And the following year saw the increase of the reviews on the KP, again, only for developed country parties or Annex I, including the Marrakesh Accords with very specific and concrete and stringent guidance on reporting and reviews, and also the initial reviews of KP back in 2007. Then 2010 saw the emergence of the BRs and BOI requirements, and actually the beginning of RED Plus. In 2014 and 2015, the reviews of BRs and the technical analysis of BOR started, and at the same time, the Paris Agreement was being agreed. So, but we have then the first commitment period of the period review, and then we have 2018, the adoptions of the Katowice package, which is the operationalizations of the Paris Agreement, and then now we have the current negotiations on the last aspects of MPGs leading to Glasgow. I think just a moment. Yes, I need to speed up. Just me share. I think I can skip this one because I'm going just to show two useful slides. Then, and this is the shows several materials that are available on regarding ETF that may be useful to support transition to the ETF. So in terms of the Secretariat has published on this website a reference manual for the enhanced transparency framework, and there is also available a set of frequent questions that you may wish to consult. And then also there is the GHG support unit of transparency divisions, performs frequent actions as building through training workshops, the capacity, and also supporting through in-country quality assurances activities. You may be involved in those. And also the training of experts. And then on the second column, this consultative group of experts has been taking action in different ways. As they provided a technical handbook for developing countries, parties on preparing for implementations of the ETF, and this organizing a set of regional hands-on training workshops. And they also have help desks. And then they also have others like the Paris Committee on Capacity Building and the Momentum for Universal Participation on UNCC, and other international organizations are also taking some action. So this is something, if the presentation is available there, you see the links, you can Uber and go to the links themselves, or you find more information. And this is the last slide, and it's just to promote that you or your experts take the training as technical experts for the reviews or technical assessments. And of course, there are the ones in the future which not yet agreed, but you can start already now taking the training as GHG inventory experts under the convention. And the advantage, besides contributing to the work of conventions and the Paris Agreement, is gaining useful skills on GHG inventories, build your network and meet experts from around the world and learn what other countries do, bring in lessons, learn home. It's quite useful, this capacity as well. So for that, you need to be nominated to be a roster of experts by your national focal point and complete the mandatory training. For that, you contact the Secretariat. So this completes my presentations. I think I went a little bit over my allotted time. Sorry for this. And more detailed presentations on reporting and use of software will be provided in following presentations. So over to you, Yamikani. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vita, for a wonderful presentation. Indeed, this presentation will be shared to our participants so that they can have their own time to go through some of this and indeed participate in some of the trainings and links to have those resources which you have just shared through the links. So without wasting much of another time, let me invite Tomo to do his presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Tomoyuki Aizawa. So I'd like to show I would like to provide a structural overview of the current CRF or the common reporting format systems. Okay, so now these tables are table 1 and 2 of the annex to the 70 CMP8. I hope you are familiar with these tables. That it is used for the developing country parties to report the national greenhouse gas inventories. So this light blue one is the tables for the Annex I developed country parties using these tables. These tables are the same, almost same, because showing the GHG emissions profile in a year of the country. So, but there are several differences. Like sector 3 solvent and other product use only in the table 1 and 2 of the 70 CP8, and sector 5 land use change and forestry it has been changed to the land use change and the forest LULUCF. So and also some categories under this category 5 or LULUCF are a bit different. Why they are different? So because the requirement, the history of the development are a bit different. The original requirement is in the convention. I believe this is the first requirement or the commitment under the convention to report the periodically update, publish GHG inventories. So the summary tables are adopted in the COP1, and following that, some IPCC guidelines were developed. But for the developing countries parties, reporting requirements defined in the CP8, the 17 CP8. Since that time, the structure of the method based on the revised 1996 guidelines. So for the Annex I country parties, after that, other IPCC guidelines were also applied to the reporting requirement. Then the reporting table structure become a bit different. And other difference is not only for the summary tables, and also the Annex I country parties table has some background tables. So like this. So there are 3 different layers, and the light blue one shows the summary information, and the light green one shows the summary information of each sector, and the orange ones are showing, or the parties or the inventory compiler needs to fill the most disaggregated level of the information there. Then this information will be aggregated automatically to the sectoral total, sectoral reporting tables, and go to the national total. So this is the current structure, and it facilitates the review activities. And through the review activities, so many feedback the next one countries got from the review activities, and it was used for the improvement of their inventories. So now I'd like to focus on this most disaggregated table. So emissions activity, this table, the orange one, its components are the 3 generally: emissions on the most right side, and activity data. So these 2 elements, inventory compiler need to fill in the table. And the last element is implied emission factors. These are calculated automatically. Emissions are divided by active data. And this information is quite useful because this is a standardized data, and it can be compared with IPCC default or other countries reporting tables. So if if I have 1,000 times higher values than the default or other countries' values, so then I need to check that some unit conversion might be wrong. So in this regard, these are most disaggregated level information. It's very useful for improvement, and also it can be used for the QA/QC purposes. So this, and yes, naturally, these emissions and activities, these informations are automatically aggregated to the higher level. So the table, it shows so many categories, but in reality, the inventory compiler needs to fill in the half or the less than half categories to be filled in. So the other information will be aggregated automatically. And this information is going to the sectoral total. Now I'm showing the waste sector. And this information is also going to the higher level. So but not only for the national emissions total, summary 7, it shows the key category. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm skipping that one and coming. The table 7, it's a result of the key category analysis based on the tier 1. So inventory compilers are not necessary to calculate it or to create this table by themselves. So based on the information at the most disaggregated level, the IPCC software, I'm sorry, not IPCC software, the CRF reporting system will generate this table, key category, result of the key category analysis automatically. I think this is quite useful tool to check up and reduce the burden of the inventory compiler. So this is the current structure of the CRF table. So there are several levels, and some result will be automatically aggregated. So thank you very much. So that's my presentation. So I'll bring back to the Yamikani. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you so much, Tomo, as well as Vita, for the wonderful presentations, and colleagues, experts who are here in. I think we have indeed witnessed the rich information from the Secretariat, including the overview of the tables, which are currently reported or used by the Annex I parties. I'll just give you an information that as the LDC, we are advocating for the adoption and use of the Annex I tables as the basis for the current negotiations, as well as the use of this sectoral background, as well as summary tables, so that we should increase the transparency, as well as what we call to facilitate the review process, so that indeed we can have more and verifiable and reliable at most disaggregated level. So it's good that we have now this presentation where we have been demonstrated how these tables look like. And for that, I think we'll have a good starting point for our discussions as we move on. And on the emphasis, Tom has mentioned the important tool, the CRF reporter, which I think we also have another presentation on how the CRF reporter works. And indeed, it's a very important tool which simplifies a lot of work for us compilers at national level. So please let us also pay attention in the next presentation, which will include the demonstration on how the CRF reporter works. But for now, let me invite our dear experts who are here in to a question and answer session where you can raise your hand as well as also write in the chat if you have any questions from the two presentations which have just Aurelius from Zambia. You have the floor, please.
Thank you very much. I just simply wanted to thank you for the two presentations that have come up. My name is Nkonde Aurelius from Zambia. I'm with the Climate Change and Natural Resources Management Department. Basically, I wanted to find out from Mr. Tomoyuki the common reporting format, rather tables. Are they also going to be integrated into the IPCC inventory software, and how this maybe relate with the toolkit that you've just talked about, the reporter, the reporter toolkit? I'm just trying to understand the vision ultimately. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we also have another question before we invite our colleagues to present? Already in the chat, I see some questions. While we are okay, we have the BC, please.
Merci beaucoup. Je voudrais d'abord remercier, je m'appelle Libasba, je suis le président du Comité national changement climatique du Sénégal. C'est à ce titre que je participe à cette réunion. Je voudrais d'abord remercier et féliciter les intervenants qui ont fait vraiment un excellent update par rapport à ce qu'on avait l'habitude de voir et qui promettent même d'intégrer certaines informations dans le logiciel, et ça, c'est une très bonne chose. Mais je voudrais poser une problématique. C'est-à-dire que ce logiciel, ces équations, dans toute sa structure, est d'inspiration de la structure des pays développés. Ça, il faut le noter. Et il se trouve que les pays LDC, les pays en développement, ont des structures d'économie, c'est-à-dire une même appellation peut recouvrer différentes réalités. Quand on dit par exemple vache laitière, et en se limitant simplement à dire vache laitière, c'est-à-dire qui produit du lait. Dans le nord, c'est des dizaines de litres, alors qu'au sud, c'est à peine 5 litres, et même moins que ça. Donc, c'est un exemple comme ça que je donne pour les vaches laitières, mais je peux le dire pour les forêts, pour l'agriculture, c'est-à-dire une même appellation à différents contenus quand on passe d'un environnement géographique à un autre. Et je pense que prendre en charge cette problématique-là demanderait quand même des investigations supplémentaires. Et des investigations supplémentaires, mais aussi disons, même s'il y a des renforcements de capacité souvent de ça et là, ça devrait être accompagné de recherches à l'échelle de ces régions, à l'échelle d'un certain nombre de pays, pour essayer de caractériser davantage les facteurs d'émission, les structures de certaines équations, la modification de certaines appellations, faire varier peut-être quand on dit vache laitière au sud, vache laitière au nord, etc. Essayer de faire en sorte, parce que je le dis, parce que pour avoir pratiqué le processus, généralement, quand on dit ceci est une exigence et on met entre parenthèses en rouge flexibilité, c'est que ce qui est en rouge flexibilité est appelé à disparaître. Ce qui veut dire qu'on demande de plus en plus d'exigences. Les exigences sont en train de s'élever encore. Et aucun mécanisme n'est mis en place pour que, à la base, les pays puissent saisir davantage, monter en grade au niveau de la collecte des informations, surtout, j'allais dire, mais aussi de l'utilisation des facteurs d'émission vraiment qui recoupent les réalités locales. Merci beaucoup.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ribase, for quite a number of questions which you have raised. I think that will be answered. Now, also, let me highlight some of the questions from the chat so that our colleagues from the Secretariat can answer. First one is what factors influence that is coming from Kenya plus results, emission results. CRF tables going to be are the CRF tables inventory software? Well, it was a different software from the IPCC software, so it's just I think they are similar to the previous one. Are the CRF tables a different software from the IPCC software? So those are the three additional questions. So please, Tomo and Vita, you can respond.
Thank you, Yamikani. I may respond to two of them. Well, the other two questions about CRF reporter are also related to CRF reporter, not only for the tables. We can provide a response, but but of course there will be a third presentation, and so it may be self-explanatory. About the questions on the use of different emission factor and parameters for the dairy cow. I think there was given the example of dairy cow. I know it's just an example. Of course, the MPGs they actually they encourage the country-specific, it's very clear, country-specific and regional emission factors and activity data were available. And actually this has been done in, for instance, in developed countries when they're reporting in the CRF tables. They do this in agriculture because it depends on also on the climate, how the degradations of the manure contributes to the emissions of methane. So this can be done. Yes, so there's a promotion of that, and you can use that, and you're encouraged to do so. That's not an issue. But when you mention the flexibility, the flexibility is something that the party provides at national level. The flexibility here has a very particular meaning in terms of what the party can do in terms of the MPGs. The second question I'll touch is about the negotiations. Well, the question was, are these negotiations of using Annex I reporting tables just beginning, or have they reached a given stage? And what value exactly apart from comparability do they add to the reporting? All right, that's the first part. This is the negotiations are not on using Annex I reporting tables. The negotiations on the tables is to agree on a set of common reporting tables. And the fact that sometimes some parties in the submissions, they use the developed countries as an example is maybe because they were more elaborated than the others, and there was maybe the idea to enhance the level of reporting. But they will be the common reporting tables for both parties, and this does not mean that they will be used the Annex I reporting tables. And at what level we are, and in the substance page you can see the latest informal note by the co-facilitators that reflecting what happened in the SP session in June. And you have there a link for the examples of tables under considerations. So again, that's it covers tables for all categories and sectors, but again, it doesn't mean that they will be agreed, and this is something to be discussed in Glasgow. What's the purpose of the common reporting tables? And the part, I mean, of course, comparability is the key issue in terms of definitions, but also is about transparency, because the more information you provide, activity data and emission factors, parameters, the more transparent you report. So you ensure that information is provided, quantitative information is provided. And of course, this may be translated in databases available in the website. So this adds also to the spread of information. It facilitates reviews as well, because the reviewers will have the same information in the same place. So I don't know if I will pass to Tomo or Lauren or Nashib also here, so to complement the other two questions. Yamikani? Back to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Vita. I think at this point, since the other questions are on CRF software or reporter, I would suggest that we go into the next presentation, then already some of these questions might be self-explanatory during the presentation, and we might have other questions. Yeah, so colleagues, since most of the other questions were the SRF reporter or the SRF software, at this point in time, I think we can go straight into the second presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Yamikani, and thank you, Matt. I am Nasib, working in UNFCCC Secretariat Transparency Division in supporting the development and maintenance of the CRF reporter, in addition to working on the receiving of the national submission from the parties. So in my presentation today, I'll be covering the CRF reporter to briefly explain you what the CRF reporter is, and then also talk you on the workflow in the CRF reporter, and briefly walk you through in between my presentation. I'll also switch to the CRF reporter to show you how the CRF reporter works live. So I'll show one or two features in the CRF reporter by logging into the CRF reporter, so that you have a feel of how the CRF reporter works and how it looks like. And during that, I'll also explain about the key features of the CRF reporter. And towards the end of the presentation, I'll also explain how you can request access to the CRF reporter if you want to use a CRF reporter and see how it works. And during my presentation, I think I'll cover the couple of questions that were asked in the previous session. So that would be covered during my presentation. And if they are not covered, then I'll try to answer those questions. And then you can also raise the additional question that you may have. So going to the CRF reporter. So CRF reporter is an online application for reporting the annual GHG inventories currently used by Annex I parties. So Annex I parties every year on 15th of April, by 15th of April, they submit the time series from 1990 or the base year until the year -2. So in 2021, they submitted the inventory information from 1990 to the year 2019. So they reported this information using the CRF reporter. And CRF reporter does not estimate the GHG emissions, it's only a reporting tool. So I think there was a question earlier on comparison between the CRF reporter and the IPCC software. So IPCC software estimates the GHG emissions, whereas CRF reporter does not estimate the GHG emission, and it's only a reporting tool to report the GHG emissions to the UNFCCC Secretariat. And CRF reporter allows the interoperability with the national system using the XML schema. So that I'll cover later in the presentation. And the CRF reporter allows you to work offline using Microsoft Excel to enter the data. So you have the possibility to work offline. And CRF reporter is intended to be used by the registered user within the party, and multiple users can work on the same inventory. So for an inventory for the multiple sectors, so multiple experts can work on the same inventory at the same time. And there are different roles and access rights that are available in the CRF reporter. So, and I'll also explain that a bit in detail later in my presentation. So here you can see that it's a CRF reporter workflow. So on the column, you can, on the green rows, you can see there are different roles defined in the CRF reporter. Like there are sectoral experts, there is national inventory compiler, and there is national focal point. So these are the roles that are defined in the CRF reporter and have the different level of access rights. And on the column in the blue colors, you can see there are various steps in the CRF reporter. So the first one is the user administration, where you define the user roles within the CRF reporter, and then you create the inventory, and then you compile the inventory by entering the data either manually or via import using the Excel file that I'll show you later in the CRF reporter. And then you can do the internal review to check the data within your country. You can export the data that you have entered into the Excel file, and then you can do your internal checks for the data. And then you request that inventory for the approval to your national focal point or any other authority within your country. And once that inventory is approved within your country, then you can generate an official submission and submit it via the CRF reporter. So this is a basic workflow in the CRF reporter. And in each of these steps, you can see that the user is notified by the email, so that you are notified upon completion of each of these steps. So, and as I mentioned earlier, so there are different users in the CRF reporter, and it's only intended to be used by the registered user within the country. So the national inventory compiler is the admin user for the party, and that user is the responsible for creating the inventory and adding the users within the countries, and also specifying the properties of the inventory. And there are other roles which I won't go into the details, like national focal point who approves, expert who work on the inventory. So there can be multiple experts for different sectors, and then the national reviewer who reviews the inventory, and the submission module for submitting. And these roles are solely for the CRF reporter. So in your country, they may not necessarily be the same roles within the country. So these roles that are defined here are only for the CRF reporter. And as I said earlier, it's like all of these users can work simultaneously on the same inventory at the same time. So in this slide, the CRF reporter follows the structure and format of the aggregate CRF tables, which are annexed in decision 24 CP19. And once you create an inventory, so the first time you create an inventory, so you enter the data. And once you have created the inventory, then you can copy the inventory for the next year. So you don't have to enter the data again and again for the next year. So you can copy all the data of this year and then add an additional year for the next year, so that you don't need to do the data entry from the scratch. And the role of the NIC, which I said, as I said earlier, is the admin user can configure the properties of the inventory by selecting the sectors. So here you can see on the figure. So on the left side, you can specify the properties, like for which year you are preparing the inventory, the name of the inventory, and so on. And the middle box, which mention the sectors, so you can select the sectors for which you want to prepare the inventory. So it's energy, industrial process, agriculture, LULUCF, waste, and so on. And for some of the sectors, you can also select the options. So option A, B, or C that is applicable for your country. So these options and approaches for the LULUCF sectors are based on the 2006 IPCC guidelines. And then on the last column, you can see that you can also select the inventory years. So you can select the years for which you want to report the inventory. So in this case, I have selected the years 91 to 95 for which I want to report the inventory. So in this way, you can specify the properties of your inventory. And in the next slide, it's about inventory compilation. So at this point, I'll move to the CRF reporter application, and I'll show you in the CRF reporter how you do this data entry. So you can see a live demo of how this data are entered in the CRF reporter. And I'll also explain these bullets. And at the end of that demonstration, I'll again come back to the presentation and show you the remaining features. So let me just quickly go back to the CRF reporter. So I hope you are still able to see my screen with the CRF reporter login window. So you have a web link for accessing the CRF reporter, and I'll share towards the end what is this web link and how you can access the request for this CRF reporter. So once you have the link, so you can use the username and the password. So this is the, once you enter the username and password, so this is the CRF reporter main window. So here you can see that there are different tabs like administration, where you can add the users, and then inventories. So in this tab, where you can specify the properties of the inventories that I mentioned earlier. So the data entry, where you can enter your data, and this reporting tables is the place where you can see the data that you have entered. Import export is where you can export the Excel files or import the Excel file or XML file. And data checks allows you to do the key category analysis check, and then also allows you to check the recalculation, and also allows to check the completeness of your data entry in the reporter. And submission is for official submission. And then the useful links contains the user manual and other useful links for compiling your inventory. So for now, I'll directly go to the data entry tab. So here you can see that once I click on the data entry, so I have the navigation tree where I can expand on the on the category. So let me just increase the zoom so that it's.
S'il vous plaît, est-ce que vous pouvez zoomer le tableau là?
Yes, I just realized that it was too small to see on the screen. So I hope you are able to read the text now. So once I click on the data entry, so I can see that there are different sectors. So energy, IPPU, agriculture, and so on, based on the decision 24 CP19. And if I click on this plus signs, this category trees goes on expanding. So you can go on and expanding to the category where you want to enter the data. So for now, for this thing, so I'm into the electricity generation now on the node electricity generation. So here you can see that there are solid fuel, liquid fuel, speed, biomass, and fossil fuels. Say for in my country, I have the gaseous fuel that I use for generating the electricity. So in that case, I can just by right clicking, I can add a gaseous fuel on this category. So you can see that now I have added the node for the gaseous fuel. And once this gaseous fuel is added, so I can specify the fuel consumption. Say, for example, let me just randomly put some number 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the amount of fuel consumption that I have added. So, and my basis for calculation is NCV. And then here you can specify the method, emission factor information, and so on. And then you specify the fuel consumption, and then you specify the emissions. So let me just write some numbers here. So as you can see that I have entered the numbers here. So in the white cells and in the green cells below here, the numbers are automatically calculated. So the CRF reporter automatically does the calculation for you. So once you enter the activity data and the emissions, the implied emission factors are automatically calculated. And if I just enter some numbers here, so this calculation would automatically be revised here. So as you can see it here. So in this way, you can enter the data and the CRF reporter does automatic calculation. And you just have to enter the data for activity data and the emissions. And like for some categories or for some years, if I don't have the data, and if I say that in 1995, if I don't have the gaseous fuel occurring, so I can enter the notation keys NO, meaning not occurring. So if I do so, you can see that for the rest of the years, the notation keys is automatically propagated. So this is also one of the features in the CRF reporter. If the data is not occurring in your country, you don't have to enter it every year. So for the notation keys, it's automatically propagated. And for N2 emissions, if you are not estimating, so you can enter any, and this is also automatically propagated in the CRF reporter. Yes, so here you can see that NA is automatically propagated. And so since this is not estimated, so this method and emission factor are not applicable for this fuel. So that's why it's also automatically populated, and the implied emission factor is also automatically done. So in this way, you can add the category that is applicable for your country, and then you can enter the data. So this is one of the way of entering the data, which is online. And here you don't, and as you have seen, like there is no save button in the CRF reporter. So the data are saved as you entered. So you don't need to worry about saving this data while you are working online. So these are saved automatically on the online database. And here you can see that you can add the nodes, and you can go on expanding the nodes that are applicable. And for some categories where if you do not have the disaggregated data by the fuel level, so if I just have the data at the level of electricity generation, so you can also override directly at this level, at the fuel consumption level, or at the aggregated of the gaseous level without specifying the emissions for the fuel. So this is also the feature available in the CRF reporter. So you can override the formulas within the CRF reporter. And you can also see like the formulas and everything. So once you navigate, you can see a lot of features in the data entry. So in this way, you can add the node, and if you have added a node and if you think that this category might not be applicable, then you can just click on this cross button here, and then you can delete that node if that node is not applicable for your country. So in this way, you can do the data entry manually in the CRF reporter. And another feature of entering the data is using the Excel export import. So in this Excel export import, you have the possibility to export the CRF reporter, the Excel, the data entry grid in the Excel format, and then you can work in the Excel file, and then you can re-import back that Excel file into the CRF reporter when you are online. So let me just show you one of the node here. So here you can see the same navigation tree. So I was working on the gaseous fuel a while ago. So this was the node that I was working. So you can select only a single data entry grid. You can select the whole sector, all the data entry grid. So in this case, let me just select this gaseous fuel node. So I have just exported that file, and then I can here in the CRF reporter on this my data export, you can see the status of your export. And here I can already see that the exporting of the data entry grid is a success. So I can download the file from here. So this is the Excel file that I have. Let me just move this Excel file to the other screen. So this is the Excel file that I have exported from the CRF reporter. So here you can see that these were the numbers that I had entered in the CRF reporter in the white cells. And these were the notation keys that I have entered. So for example, so now I can work on this Excel version. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, let me write 5, 6, 7, 8 here. And then for this one, let me select that this is a GCV. And instead of any, let me just write NO here. So here you can see that I have entered the data in the white cells here, and in the green cells, the data is not automatically calculated in the Excel file. But once I import this file back to the CRF reporter, then this data point would also be automatically calculated upon import. So let me save this file and import it back to the CRF reporter to show you how this CRF reporter import works using the Excel file. So here I can go to my data. So here I can go to Excel XML import. So let me select the file that I have just saved. So it is saying to me that I need to, the import process has started, and I can select that my data import. And here I can see that the status is working, and it normally shows the time of how much time will it take. So it says that it will take around 3 minutes for me to import. And importing takes a bit of time because it has to do the calculation of the data imported for the inventory. So this is how the Excel import works. Let me, instead of waiting 3 minutes, let me go back to the presentation and then again show you. So here I just explained this thing to you. So Excel import is done. And then another way of doing is the inventory compilation. So which is the XML import. So XML import allows the interoperability with the national system. And some of the Annex I parties use this XML import to import the data directly from the national system using these XML files. So, and with the XML file, you can do the bulk data import for the entire inventory. So this is the format of on the screen. I have taken a screenshot of the XML file format that you can download from the CRF reporter and re-upload back after filling the data in your national system. And this XML import is one of the possible options for working with the CRF IPCC software. So, but this is yet to be discussed in the negotiation. So, we think that this might be one of the possible options for connecting the IPCC software with the CRF reporter. So it's a similar to the Excel file. So you import first, you export the XML file first, enter data, and then again import back to the CRF reporter. And the CRF reporter also does the key category analysis, which is done automatically, and it shows the contribution of each category and gas combination, both for level and trend, with and without LULUCF, based on approach 1 of the 2006 IPCC guideline. So this key category analysis is the upper part of the screen is from the CRF reporter. So these are directly mapped into the CRF tables that I'll show you in a while. So this data is mapped automatically in the format of the CRF tables in the Excel file. And the CRF reporter also does the completeness check. So for each of the data entry grid, you can see the status of your data entry, and it is done in a visual way with green, orange, and red color combination. So green means if you see that the sum of the node is green, means the data entry is complete. So all the data for all years, for all the cells for that category is complete. Orange means there is a partial data entry, and the red means the data entry has not started for that node. So you have the visual indication of the status of your data entry in this manner. So your tendency would be to make it all green so that the data entry would be complete. And linking to the presentation made by Tomo earlier, so once you enter the data into the white cells here, in this case, here I have entered 2, 3, 4. So all these white cells data are aggregated upwards into the parent category. So this is the sectoral data. So, and this aggregated data is gone to the sector level. So this was only for the fuel combustion. And now this data is aggregated, is mapped into the sectoral report for the energy sector. So this fuel combustion, you can see it here. So this is mapped to this cell. And then this is mapped to the national total. So you can see here that the blue cell here is the summary table for the inventory year 1990 that covers all the sectors, where the data entered for the fuel combustion is automatically mapped. So this is aggregated upwards. And then this data is filled across the time series. So you can see here that the data that I have entered for 1990 is mapped here. So the only data that you enter was on the white cells on this orange colored sheet. So the data that you have entered there is automatically aggregated and mapped into the respective CRF tables by the CRF reporter itself. So you don't have to copy paste or do anything to generate these Excel files. It's automatically done by the CRF reporter. And on this slide, I have just this slide and the next slide, I have just highlighted the key features of the CRF reporter that I have explained a while ago. But before closing my presentation, let me just go back to the CRF reporter and show you the data that I have entered a while ago. So Excel import. So the Excel file that I had requested at 11:32, it finished in around 1.5 minutes. So, and it says that it's successful. So let me go back and see the data that I have entered in the Excel file if it's reflected here. So it was in the 1A1 electricity generation for the gaseous fuel. So now here you can see that the data that I have entered in the Excel file for 1995 was this 5678. So this is reflected here in the CRF reporter. And these were the emissions for CO2, CS4, and N2O I had marked as NO. So it is reflected here. And as you can see here, the implied emission factor, which was not calculated in the Excel file, is now reflected here in the CRF reporter. So all of these values, so all of these gaseous values would be aggregated to electricity generation here on this load, and all of these side nodes would be aggregated upwards in the on the 1A, and then it goes upward to the, so all of these child nodes is aggregated here, and so on. It goes upward to the fuel combustion, then to the energy, and to the sectoral totals that I have just mentioned a while ago. So all of these things are automatically done by the CRF reporter based on the data that you have entered on the individual nodes. And here you can see that the CO2 conversion to the CO2 equivalent is also done automatically by the CRF reporter. So you don't have to worry about converting into the CO2 equivalent. And for all of this conversion, for the Annex I parties, AR4 GWPs are used. So all of these conversion are done automatically in the CRF reporter. So let me, and just to show you the data checks. So the key category analysis that I just mentioned a while ago is available here in the data checks. And then the completeness check that I had just mentioned a while ago about the traffic light system is also available here. So in this way, all of the features that I showed in the presentation are available in the CRF reporter. So let me just go back to the presentation once again. So I have just summarized the presentation here. So I'll just skip that part as this presentation would be shared with you. And if you want to request the access for you to get familiar with the CRF reporter, Secretariat has prepared a playground environment where you can try the features of the CRF reporter and understand how the CRF reporter is used. There is a similar, not on this link, but there is a different link for the Annex I parties who use this CRF reporter for compiling their annual inventories. And the version on this link is just for you to get familiar. And for this, if you want to get access, you can request your national focal point to nominate a person for the role of national inventory compiler, which is the admin user for that party. And that national inventory compiler can add as many users within the country. So for different sectors. So for energy, say for energy sector, you can assign 4 or 5 experts depending on how many people want to get familiar with the CRF reporter. So this is how the CRF reporter works. So, and I think with that, I conclude my presentation. And just while I was just briefly, I'll show you what was the traffic light. So here you can see that the thing that I had showed you a while ago. So if the traffic light system that I showed you a while ago, so green means I have all the data entry completed. So for example, if I go on to this node, so if I click on this one, so information is here, it was red here, mean that there was no data entry. And for the orange grid, you can see that there are some data entry there, and then some of the data entry are missing here. So this is how the completeness, it's a visual check. So I think with this, I'll conclude my presentation and I'll be happy to take the questions that you may have.
Yep, thank you so much, Nashib, for a quite well elaborated presentation. I think indeed through your presentation, some of the issues have been already answered. And this is was quite good, combining with quite a demonstration for that. And this indeed encourages us, the LDCs, as well as experts who are here to indeed request for this tool, so that we can indeed be trying on our own on how this works. Now, I think we have seen quite a good number of feedbacks on the chat as we are presenting. And the main question remains the same on what is the key difference between this CRF reporter and the Trans6 IPC, the IPC software. And so that's why I want to invite you to specifically also elaborate or highlight more, because you have already mentioned that the IPC software is responsible for estimation and doing the calculation, while this is just there for reporting. However, so questions are coming, so you can indeed elaborate on that. And the question went further to say, if this is just for reporting, so why do we need the CRF reporter? Because the IPC software can also do the function of reporting. So please, you can highlight, and also others from the Secretariat can add.
So I'm just going through reading the questions in the chat to see and I'll try to cover as much questions as possible from the chat. So I think the question was, what is the main difference between the IPC software and the CRF software? So as I mentioned earlier on the first slide of my presentation, probably towards the beginning. So CRF reporter is the reporting tool. So it does not estimate the GHG emissions, whereas the IPCC software estimates the CRF estimates the GHG emissions. So in the IPCC software, you can enter the activity data, and then you can select the emission factor and it will calculate the emissions for you. Whereas in the CRF reporter, you just, so once you have estimated the GHG emissions for your inventory, then you report the activity data and the emissions into the CRF reporter. So CRF reporter is a reporting tool, as the name says, and the IPCC software does the estimations as well. So I hope that covers the difference. And the other question was, when do you envision XML export import between CRF and IPCC inventory software will be available? As Vitor said earlier in the presentation, there is an ongoing negotiation on the developing of the common reporting tables. So during that negotiation, there is also a discussion going on about the linkages between the IPCC software and the CRTs. So once that negotiation is finalized, then we'll have a clarity on when that link and how that link would be established between the CRF reporter and the IPCC software. But at this point, we don't have any clarity until the negotiation on that item is finalized. And I think there was another question from Libasa regarding I think it's the same question. So right now, there is no linkages between the CRF reporter and the IPCC software. So once that link is established, then it would possibly, I can't say that it would be the way, but it can possibly that the CRF, from the IPCC software, you can generate the XML file and then you can import that to the CRF reporter software. So that can be one of the option, but there may be other option also, depending on how the discussion on the negotiation goes. And there was a question regarding the access for the CRF reporting tool, who are eligible and how you can get the access. So in substaff 50 conclusion, so developing country parties were invited to request the access to the CRF reporter, and the Secretariat has made available a dedicated environment for the developing countries to get familiar with the CRF reporter. So if you want to have the access to the CRF reporter playground person, then you can request your NFP to nominate a person for the role of National Inventory Compiler, who would be the admin user within that country. So that person can, once we have the nomination from your NFP for the role of NIC, then we can give the access to the NIC, and while giving the access, we will also explain about, we'll provide you with the necessary documentation on how you can add the users and then how you can use the CRF reporter. So we will provide you with the user manual and the other necessary documents. And as a part of this presentation, after this presentation, you would also receive another handout apart from this presentation, which is the kind of a quick user guide explaining you about the key features of the CRF reporter and how you can use the CRF reporter. So all of the examples that I have shown in my presentation, how to enter the data using Excel, direct data entry, completeness check, key category analysis, all of those things are explained in a step-by-step way, with 7 or 8 examples of how you can quickly get familiar with the CRF reporter. So that document would be shared with you. But for using the CRF reporter, first you need to request the access to us by writing us at crfweb@unfcc.int. I'll just post that email address in the chat also, where you can request the access. And somebody is asking, like, can you post the link here, please? I can post the link, but that link won't work unless we provide you the access, username, and the password. So first, to get familiar with the CRF reporter, your NFP has to request to nominate someone for the role of for the role of NIC to get the access. So it seems to having similar function to UNFCCC software where it's estimate emission too. So as I mentioned earlier, so CRF reporter, it's a reporting tool developed by UNFCCC for reporting the annual GHG inventory as Annex I parties. So it does not estimate the emission, it's just for the reporting on the GHG emissions. And I think there was a last question that I can see, that you enter the activity data, NCV and total emissions. And so CRF reporter automatically calculates the implied emission factor. And whereas for the IPCC software, you enter the activity data and the emission factor, and then it calculates the emissions. So there is a slight difference on how the IPCC software works, and then this CRF reporter. So I think I have covered all the questions that I could read in the chat, but you can ask question, and if any of my colleagues from the Secretariat would like to add something on that.
Yes, so we also have a hand from Aurelius from Zambia, please.
Thank you very much. For just posted my question in the chat. Basically, I was trying to find out that parties have invested quite a lot in building capacities, specifically for softwares like IPCC and other softwares that are used for the inventory. I wanted to find out basically how would the introduction of the CRF reporter, affect these investments in capacities. Would it mean that we have to, begin to change our systems in terms of MRV systems, and also that are being enhanced to, be aligned to the ETF? So what basically are the cost implications? I'm not looking for figures really, but would this affect our prior investments that have been there? Because I'm seeing a situation where we have already existing, reporting tools like the IPCC and the like, and then there's this new one that is coming in. Would this, discard or, overshadow the other reporting tools? I submit. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aurelius. I can now invite anyone from the Secretariat to respond to that.
Yep. Thank you for the question. So maybe I'll start, and then maybe I'll ask Phento to complement me. So we understand that many of the developing countries are using the IPCC software to compile the inventory. That's why we are planning for the interoperability with the IPCC software. So we are already thinking about, and we are already thinking about having that link between the IPCC software and then the CRF reporter. So that's why the party won't have a completely new system to establish. So since they are already familiar with the IPCC software, so they can just maybe add some features in their currently IPCC software on one of their release, and then that can link to the CRF reporter. But that is yet still under the discussion, but we are already planning for that interoperability with the IPCC software, as many parties are using this. And maybe for the cost implication and those things, maybe I'll invite Phento to complement me.
Thank you, Nasib. Yes, just complementing. I don't know if I can say more in concrete terms, but I know that IPCC is continuing developing the IPCC software, having development of some sectors and tiers, and they also working with the UNFCCC Secretariat and towards the having a linkage between the CRT reporter, the future CRT reporter, and the IPCC software, or the other way around. Still, of course, this is in in the beginning is the inception, and one of the main reasons is we still don't know the tables that we're going to use in the CRT. So the CRF reporter is for the parties to developing parties to get some knowledge on the CRF, on the use of reporting tools. In terms of the investment, again, there is some funds from Jeff and others for the investment, but we don't see this as a double investment, because one thing is a tool that serves the purpose of helping the parties prepare their inventories. This is the IPCC, and then the other one is a tool to serve to make to ensure comparability about reporting and ensure that information, quantitative information, is collected. So I think it depends on what it will be decided, of course, but that's slightly different purposes. It would be good to be integrated, and it still is a different thing because the IPCC has different objectives as well, but we're working towards having some sort of communications of mapping. But that's what I can tell at this moment, because still we're discussing the negotiation, so it all depends on what is coming in terms of the tables. Thank you, Nashib.
Yep. Thank you so much, Vita, for complimenting with Nashib. I think the responses are quite clear, and we are happy with the interest and feedback on this, and this will continue to be discussed in tomorrow and the other day on the differences, and touching more specifically on the LDC group position on this and how best we can go to the negotiating table with the feedback we will receive from you colleagues. We don't see any other questions now, but as I've said, we'll continue interacting. That is the reason why we have this workshop, and it has been split into 3 days. We had this opening session so that we can interact with our colleagues from the Secretariat on the ongoing work on designing common reporting tables for the national GHG inventories, which is going concurrently, as said, with the softwares and machines which will be used for reporting such information. So tomorrow we are going to go into specific sectors, and to mention, tomorrow we'll look at common reporting tables for agriculture and LULU CF sectors, while the other day we'll look at energy as well as IPPU and waste. So I encourage you to be there for specific experts for sectors I've mentioned tomorrow, but also other experts can join in if you're also interested into the other the sectors I've just mentioned. Be informed that the Zoom link will be the same as used today, and the starting time will also be the same. And as to emphasize, we're going to go deep into sector by sector so that we can deeply discuss together the CR tables for each sector as presented by the Secretariat here, has just shown us how some sectors will look like, but from tomorrow we'll go into specific sectors. And the issue of the reporting tools will also be attached. So thank you so much, the Secretariat, for being there with us, as well as the lead negotiator from the LDC Chair's office. We don't take this for granted. Indeed, this responds to your call, which you have always been calling for parties to have interactive sessions with you wherever need be. So this was this session is among of those sessions where I want us to prepare fully to the upcoming negotiations at COP26, so that we go there with an informed and improved group position towards this very important issue of greenhouse gas inventories. So reaching this far, I would like to conclude this meeting and indeed invite all the experts to the meeting tomorrow, so that they should not miss out. So we also have the survey, which has will be sent into the chat, so that you can fill in. The experts and all other participants here can fill in the survey. So please also, I would encourage all the experts here to consult their national focal points to request this software from the Secretariat, so that we can indeed be practicing and have more meaningful interactions as soon as possible, once we test them and have observed the challenges and the opportunities from there. And we might also invite the Secretariat again for another interactive session. Thank you so much, and the presentation will be shared to you. I think reaching this far, we can indeed close the meeting. See you tomorrow, all of you. Thank you.